or organic, not at all, orchard program manager at the Western Ag Research Center in Corvallis. We have several different research programs focused on Montana fruit production, including cold hardy grapes and berries, apples, and we work with growers across the state to help them be more successful in their operations. And I mostly work with apples, but what I've noticed is that there's a lot of growers who are maybe practicing organically in their orchards and fields, but they haven't necessarily taken the steps towards certification, and wanted to explore that more and also give them the opportunity to learn about that process directly from the folks involved in certification and the resources available to them. I think that, you know, certainly organic management is an important topic to discuss, but today we're really going to be focusing the conversation on the certification process and its role as a marketing and sales tool for growers who are looking to sell their fruits locally and through distribution. According to the most recent ag census, the national organic sales are up 31% from 2016 to 2019. And apples, grapes, and berries, which make up a bulk of Montana fruit production, are among the top selling organic crops. I know that there are several growers that are already practicing organic management strategies, and Montana is a great place to do it. We've got low pest pressure compared to surrounding states that have seen economic damage from things like spotted wing Drosophila, brown marmorated stink bug, and apple maggot. So it has really simplified pest management for growers. It seems that our biggest challenge, and one that we can't ignore though, is managing weeds, particularly at establishment. And while we hope to cover these topics and others in future presentations on orchard management, today the intention of this discussion is to really help you as growers decide if certification is right for you through a dialogue with folks that are involved in that process. And since we hope to make this more of a dialogue, before we hear from our first speaker, I kind of wanted to let them understand who's on the call. And so while our speakers are going to get introduced before they give their presentations, I just thought if we can run through the list really quick, and I'll kind of call your name, and if you can say who you are, what you grow, and why you're here today, I think that would be really helpful for us to focus this conversation. So I'm going to start with Bill Mans.
Hi, Katrina. This is Sue. I don't know anything about the certification process. We're just getting started growing the honeyberries, and it's more, for me, it's more just informational. When we get to that point of making that decision, I'll know more about it.
Great. 406-438-2842.
This is Georgana Webster, Montana Department of Ag. For some reason, my browser is not letting me in, which I will continue to work on. I'm the Organic Program Manager.
Great. Thanks, Georgana. We'll see if we can get that fixed. Amy Darling.
Hello. Sorry, I'm having some crazy Zoom freezing. I am Amy Darling, and I'm the Vineyard Program Manager at Western Ag Research Center. So I work with Katrina a good amount.
Great. Christy Walsh.
Hi, it's Christy Walsh. I'm over in Welbourne, Montana, outside of Billings. We grow a little bit of everything. I'm part of the Montana Berry Growers Association. So we have Hascap, honeyberries, raspberries, a bunch of apple trees, some pear trees, some peach trees, or some plum trees, and a bunch of other miscellaneous berries here and there.
Great. Well, thank you, Christy, for joining us. Bridget Jarrett.
Hi, I'm the berry coordinator at Western Ag. I'm also the laboratory manager, so I do a lot of interface with the apple program and the grape program as well.
And she's a great resource for growers. Thank you, Bridget. Let's see here. Ellen. And Ian. We'll give you a second. I think that's Frank with Healthy Harvest. Next. Let's go over that. All right. Hillary Maxwell.
Hi, I'm FCS agent at the Fort Belknap Reservation, and we have an MSU Extension Research Orchard in Lodgepole.
Yeah, great. Jerome Pasto.
Yeah, I'm probably a little out of character. So I used to grow wine grapes in California, and then we moved to St. Mary's and I started there. Now I live in Salmon, and I'm looking at starting plant next year. I've been up there several times talking to you folks.
Great.
So anyway, I kind of want to get an idea what's going on with this program and stuff, because I should really think about it as I start into this.
Yeah, wonderful. Kara Hedinger.
It looks like Kara's having some issues too. She's a grad student at MSU and she works in the weed extension lab with Dr. Seipel. And she's also organizing MOA's student presentation. So I'm really thrilled to have her.
Good. Patrick Mangan. We'll skip Patrick too.
There we go. Actually, sorry, just found the mute button. Hey, my name is Patrick. I'm the county extension agent in Ravalli County for Ag and Horticultural Services. And I also have a small apple orchard and berry orchard in the Missoula area.
Okay, great. I'm going to butcher this one. Kay Barch's iPad.
Hi, I'm Kim Barch and I raise Haskap up on the south end of Flathead Lake.
Great. All right. Sandy?
Hi, I'm Sandy. I'm from Missoula County Extension. I work in the plant clinic.
Great. Nice to hear your voice, Sandy.
You too.
All right. Steve. No, Steve? Give you one more second. All right. Taylor Lyon.
Hey, everyone. I'm Taylor Lyon. I'm a food and ag program manager at the Mission Mountain Food Enterprise Center in Ronan. And we have a specialty crop block grant. We're working with the board of the Montana Berry Growers. So Christy, that's on this call, Kim, Travis Greenwald, and a few others with Western Ag Research Station and MSU. And we're trying to promote some economic opportunities for cold hardy berries and do some product development for the Berry Growers Association.
Great. And we'll finish with Zach Miller. If for some reason we didn't get to you, you are important. We do care, but we'll get started with our agenda. So go ahead, Zach, if you want to introduce yourself real quick.
Yeah, hey, my name is Zach Miller. I'm the director at Western Ag. I think I've met most everybody here, but yeah, we do a lot of fruit and vegetable research. Yeah, I'm glad to see so many people on the call.
Yeah. All right. So hopefully that gave Georgana a chance to figure out what she needed, because she's kind of a real crucial point of our conversation today. She's from the Montana Department of Agriculture and is the organic program manager. So she's pretty involved in the certification process. Is Georgana back with us? Oh no. I see her physically on here. Well, we can pivot if we need to. And, oh, Jamie's calling her. Okay. This is the problem with Zoom in Montana, huh? All right. How about this? Let's hear from our growers first. Does that sound okay? We've got Fred Stewart and Kate Keller and Tom McCamant on the call, and they have all recently certified their orchards organic. I think maybe if we can start with, let's just make one more effort for Georgana. What do we think, Jamie?
I wasn't able to reach her.
Okay.
All right, I'm right here. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. This is my 4th Zoom meeting and then a Teams meeting, so you got me why the browser won't accept my presence audio. Don't know. So.
Okay. Will you still be able to help us out today through the phone?
Oh yes, absolutely. Just
right,
you just direct me, since now I've been in patching in and out. So.
Okay. Well, we basically just went through a round of introductions, and we have a mix of growers and other more administrative folks on the call. There's some berry growers, apple growers, a couple great focus folks. But if you could just talk to us about the certification process in Montana and how it specifically relates to organic fruit growers.
And would you also like me to end that commentary with cost share, because I noticed you had that written in the agenda also?
Yes, I absolutely would. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So in the United States, there are approximately 75 certifying agents, some of which reside or are accredited and are Department of Ags. So the Montana Department of Agriculture has an accredited, USDA accredited organic program. In our state, you have a choice. You can seek certification with the state program, or there are a couple of other certifiers that do operate in our area, and they will usually have a contract inspector come in, who could be from in-state or not. At this time, I think most of them come from out of state, and that's neither good nor bad. It just could add to your cost. But each of those certifiers are accredited and can offer you very similar services. So I should say that right away. And as far as organics are concerned, probably the main premise is that your land has to be free of prohibited materials for 3 years. So let's say in 2020, on January 1, you applied Roundup to weeds along an area, then that would mean that January 2nd, 2023, you would be eligible for certification. And so usually we tell people we don't want your money ahead of time unless you really want to come in the year before, but you could apply for organic certification that year. And then with perennial stock, that's also another portion of the rule, that let's say you decided in the same scenario, but you put your strawberries in the ground in 2022, but they would be fruiting in the next year. And that's one portion of the rule, so that you would still be clear by planting them the year before in that transition period to then be certified the next year. And so if we step back a step, just again with more perennial berry and trees that are going to take, a couple of years to grow, you can plant them now and seek certification later, because you aren't going to get any product from them for the first year or two. So it's not like you have to start 3 years later. So that's kind of a quick summation. Every certifier will have you fill out an organic system plan, which is your personal intent of how you're going to manage the land, weeds, pests, diseases, materials, harvest, storage, and your biodiversity. And that can be updated every year. And we ask you fill out, the normal things. Everybody will ask you for an application, a map, what you're producing, because we have to know what to put on the certificate. And that's kind of the short process of what we go through when we request documents. The long process is in turn just reviewing those documents. Materials would be the other highlight in regards to what are the top things to think about? You know, one is that land, where that status is, and the others are the materials you use. It's much easier if you're not going to certify or don't decide, but to check in with a certifier and say, can I use dipel? Can I use some of these other sprays for trees that, which are allowed. It just depends what exactly their base is, if they have a synthetic base or if they are just specifically a sulfur product, you know, to prevent pest and disease. And the two key registered material sources in the US are OMRI, O-M-R-I, and WSDA, BNML. And that's Organic Materials Registration Institute and the Washington State Department of Agriculture brand name material list. So you actually can use that as kind of an information source. If you find a material that you want to check if it's allowed, it either would have on the bottle or package their seal, or they would have it in their listings. So that gives you kind of a heads up on what is allowable. And of course, the rule is found in 7 CFR 205, the organic rules, and they do list some synthetics that are allowed, but there's not that many. So that's the mistake somebody could make. You know, either you don't, you think you have to start too late, or your transition date, if you have one, you know, establishing that, and then utilizing a material that would knock you out for 3 years. And so you don't want that to happen. The other things that affects fruit producers more than orchardists is probably the use of black plastic to monitor and prevent weeds. And some of those permeable materials are allowed. They just have to be pulled out in the fall so they do not disintegrate and become part of the soil, so to speak. You have an inspection every year. It's not like you get a license once and you're free for 5. You have a renewal every year, and you have an inspector who will come out and go through your system plan with you, walk your orchard or your fields, looking at the plants, assessing everything. And we're holding you accountable to what you have said you were going to do and how that directly relates to the rule. And an inspection for moderate tree operation would probably be roughly 2.5 hours, something like that. You know, a portion of it going through your spray records, those type of things. And if you purchased any new planting stock or things like that. And then the outside walkthrough of actually observing the orchard. I think that's, well, and actually after inspection, you know, that inspector writes a report, sends it to their certifier. The certifier reviews that report and then approves it, and then you are sent a certificate. And the process will take 3 months, probably from beginning to end, most likely, just because of all the timelines involved there. And then you get a certificate in the mail, which will list the crops that you have, which engages you in the ability to market with that organic seal and with that certificate and sell to the retail, co-op, restaurant, or wholesaler of your choice. And then the last component of that I'll bring up is the cost share portion. And the Farm Bill allocated cost share the last 8 years. And this year it's been reduced. It's still a good deal. You've paid your tax dollars to be part of the, have those monies in the Farm Bill, and you get reimbursed $500 maximum, or 50% of your certification cost. So that lessens your risk factor even at this first start of certification. Because if your application costs $500 and an inspection is $300 to $400, then you would receive $500 of the $800 back. So that lessens any risk financially in that portion of time. And that's an annual grant that you can apply for through the department and receive those monies when those are released. So I think that's kind of it in a quick review. If you have any questions, just holler.
Great, thank you, Georgana. I'm gonna go ahead and let folks either type in their questions for Georgana if you have any at
Okay.
this point. And if you can't figure out the typing the chat, then you can unmute and just ask directly, but we'll give that a second. So Zach would like to know if you can give us an estimate of certification costs overall.
Overall. So if you're at, and I don't have my the Zoom up to see the questions, because if I do, then I conflict with the phone at this point. So average cost is probably around $1,000. I would estimate for a tree or fruit grower. So let's say you're between, if you're under 20,000, it's about $500 for an application. If you're 20 to 40,000, it's $600. So if we take that $500 or $600, first year you receive $100 off as a new producer, and we add a $300 or $400 inspection, then right there we're looking right around that $900 bracket, roughly. And then the next year, the first year you wouldn't be paying any sales, but the next year you would be paying a sales percent. And this program, I should say, it's all pass-through costs. So what you're paying for inspection is how many hours the person's there and they're driving, the mileage. And it's just pass-through costs straight through. We are not funded through the general fund. We are actually more like a business, and what comes in has to go out. So.
Great. So a question from Fred is, how do you apply for the cost share program?
The applications are either on our website, you can apply through there, and it'll say cost share, or you can go to your local FSA office.
Okay, great. And what sort of records will folks need to show for the transition period?
For transition period records, it would be any materials you use during that time. Fertilizers, disease prevention, pest prevention, those things that you have been actively using as a material. Other than that, that would be it. Other than a secured date of transition. So that example I gave you, we would need to know when the last spray date actually was. So you'd need that documented.
And are there any soil amendments or composts that are not allowed under organic rules that people should be aware of?
So as far as tree fruit is concerned, yes, you can run poultry or other animals through your orchard as long as, and there's a 90 to 120 day rule that manure and those animals have to be out of that area 90 to 120 days before harvest. So we think of tree fruit dropping on the ground, where that would affect that. Berries and stuff are a little bit more specific because they are closer to the ground. And so that 90-day rule would apply there. And as far as, and we think of compost, the NOP has a rule in regards to what true compost is. But, aged manure is allowed, raw manure is allowed, compost is allowed. And the only thing that I would think, especially on the west side, to be aware of is that sometimes you will pick up, even a plastic bale of steer manure says organic on it. And they're meaning organic in the sense of the word that it's kind of from the earth. They're not meaning it's certified organic or that it's allowed. And on the west side, you have a couple facilities that utilize biosolids and sewage sludge. And that one of those products, I think, is EKO. And then there's another one, somewhere up north of the Kalispell area, I believe. And so that's something to watch for.
Sorry, it's called Glacier Gold. I interrupted.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. And so, again, call us up and ask, email us, can I use this? And you just have to read those labels. And they could say that on the back and of their labeling, and they could not. They could just allude to that. And so those are the cautionary tales of compost or soil amendment material that you need to be aware of. But mulching with wood chips for berries, that's kind of common too. There's nothing wrong with those wood chips if they're out of a mill. Fabric barrier is kind of common also with berries on the ground. And because you're depending how big your acreage is, cost is going to be prohibitive what you're allowed, what your budget will allow you to apply.
Great. And then along those same lines, any cautions for folks putting in fencing and trellis and how the restrictions on those materials?
Excellent question. I forgot about that because that is definitely very true. So treated wood posts are not allowed, no matter if you put them in concrete, no matter what. If you're fencing the outside perimeter against deer or elk, in some of your guys' area, bear too, because they want those fruits. There is no restrictions as long as those posts are a very well-defined buffer from your crop itself. And so I don't have an exact footage. It would just be because treated posts leach at least 6 feet out. And so, obviously the things to use would be pipe or metal, or untreated post, and usually that it means juniper. And so those are the things that you can use, but you can use a T-post, for any trellising aids, those things, but not any treated wood. And that will throw you out 3 years untreated wood. If you happen to have your whole area fenced and it has a decent buffer, some things are grandfathered in if they've been there since ancient history, so to speak, but that would need to be determined by knowing more factors than just me simply saying that. So.
Great. So a quick clarification on that. You mentioned that metal's okay, and does that include drill stem coming from
the oil fields?
Yeah.
If they're cleaned out. Yeah.
And then an additional clarification, can you confirm that you can leave in fabric weed barrier over the winter? It's fabric versus plastic.
So there's different types of weed barriers, and the permeable ones that we associate with larger scale berry production are allowed, but you would have to ask us identify that to us right up front. So we make sure that we're talking about the same type of materials. But plastic barriers are not, because they disintegrate and then they contaminate the soil with those pieces of plastic. But there are barriers that are allowed and are used in large scale berry production that are allowed because they're permeable and they don't disintegrate.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Georgana before we move on to Jamie? All right. So next we're going to hear from Jamie. She's the executive director of the Montana Organic Association, and she's going to talk to you about resources available through the association to organic growers in Montana. And she was really helpful in putting this together, providing the Zoom link and outreach. And so thanks again, Jamie.
Oh, thank you, Katrina. We're happy to work together.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things Mo does really well is collaborate. One of the first pitches I want to make is normally we have an in-person conference that has, over 40 speakers, goes out over a couple days, organic food, lots of networking, lots of learning. We're not having that this year. We'll be doing it virtually. One of the sessions that we always have is Organic University. And that will give you an overview and some real life examples and the ability to talk to people who have been organic for a long time. I have the schedule up on my screen. I hope you can see it. Okay, great, got a nod. So it'll be over the course of 3 days. I tried to make the schedule not too daunting, and it will all be recorded, so you can go back and look at that later. One of the most valuable, well, there's a lot of valuable things about it, but one of the things that I'm always really proud of is that, and Georgana, I've heard this from her, is that folks who attend Organic U are able to put their organic system together and have it nearly ready when it's time to start looking at. So just giving a plug there, we have no charges on any of our sessions this year. We just ask that you register for those on our website. One other plug I'd like to put in for extension folks. So there's an organization called the Organic Agronomy Training Service. It got its start in the East Coast, basically, and it's looking at organic grain production and training agronomists and extension folks on organic systems, particularly as it applies to grain production. That will be expanding eventually, but right now it's just that focus. So that be looking for that in the new year. We'll have podcasts, some virtual events, and then hopefully some in-person events too. It's likely there will be a cost for that, but again, having to pivot and figure out how to work things. Any questions about Organic U?
No, but Georgana, if you might be able to mute your phone for the time being, if that's possible, just mute the phone. The audio isn't interfering.
Okay. So yeah, take a look at our schedule, Organic U, and then our other scheduled events as well. So my job is to talk about MOA and what MOA is. Not very good at this, but so the Montana Organic Association first formed in about 2002 and ultimately became a formal trade association in around 2004. The founding members included all those folks who were organic before there was organic certification, and have worked a ton on developing organic standards and bringing the organic movement to Montana. You know, a lot of times they were on their own in rural communities, and the network that they were able to build was extremely important to them. And that included not only, you know, sharing information about different crops, but seed and equipment, and just a really great motivated bunch of folks. So who belongs to MOA? And that's farmers and ranchers, of course. And when I say farmers and ranchers, that means the entire spectrum. We have direct to market farmers. We have ranchers, not only beef, but sheep and goats, and we have some chicken producers as well. We also have the large scale grain and lentil producers, and then integrated operations. So there's a wide variety of folks, and we do have some fruit producers as well. We also have the processors, and so that would be like our grain processors, our oilseed processors, and some of our food manufacturers as well. We have agronomists and other ag service professionals, whether that would be insurance or banking, those sorts of services. We have researchers, and we rely on them for a lot of our content for our conference. So we are grateful to their work. There's another organization called the Organic Advisory and Education Council, and they focus more on specific research projects. It's a separate organization from MOA, but there's a lot of overlap. We also have food professionals and food system professionals. Last night, we just had a cooking demo making lentil mousse from a young gal who grew up on an organic farm and has brought organic food to the High Line, and that's not a small thing. So we get into that. We also have students. Love to have students involved in MOA. And then we also work with other ag and sustainability organizations, not only at the state level, but at the national level as well. So we work with Arrow, we work with the Montana Farmers Union, Northern Plains Resource Council, NCAT, and locally, and then also organizations like the Organic Trade Association, Organic Farmers Association, National Sustainable Ag Coalition. So we're quite well networked. One of the Montana really does have an outsized leadership role in organics in the country, and you could even say arguably internationally as well. Right now, we have a young farmer and board member and inspector, Nate Powell-Palm, who sits on the National Organic Standards Board and was just elected vice chair. That's not a small thing. So he is not the only MOA member who has sat on the National Organic Standards Board, but it's not a common thing. Our members have been recognized nationally for their leadership roles and their inspiring stories as well. So what do we do? Again, normally we would have our conference, and that's the big focus of MOA's activities. It's a way to connect and teach people and do business, and again, those learning those tips and tricks and mentoring. We provide information. If you were to call me and ask about organic certification, I would send you to Georgiana's office. We provide support and assistance to our members. Right now, we are working with Arrow on a project we call the Montana Food Providers Project. And I know Dave Prather was involved with that. He's on our call, and maybe some other folks too. I can't see everyone. But that was in response to COVID. There were a lot of dollars coming into the state, and we saw those bypassing our organic producers and our farmers in general on the ground. And so this was a project to make sure that our Montana farmers were getting some of those dollars. Montana farmers and ranchers are generous, but you can't expect them to donate everything. So that was a really fun project. You can learn more about that on our website. We do promotion. We promote our members' products and businesses. We do representation by way of lobbying and policy development. In a typical year, we would have several delegations travel to DC to lobby. Obviously, we're not doing that this year, but we do have representation on the national organizations I mentioned as well. And one of the most valuable things is the networking piece. There are projects that have come out of MOA just by meeting face to face or getting to know one another that we're really proud of. Any questions on that? That might have been a duplicate slide. So we do have our conference, we have farm tours, we have our website, we have our newsletter, a business directory, which is one of our most visited pages on our website, which actually really surprised me. But I think it's great. It definitely lets our members know that people can find them. We do the lobbying and then the other collaborations. If you would like to get involved, please register for a conference and attend Organic U. And that's a good way to get to meet people. And again, people are from all over the state and region. And then you can become a member or a sponsor, and we're very affordable and try to keep it that way. So thank you all. And if you need to contact me, there's my contact information. So thanks.
Great, thank you, Jamie. Does anybody have any questions for Jamie and the Montana Organic Association? Okay, well, if we don't quite yet, you'll still have time to ask questions at the end, but I think we're all really excited to hear from some of our growers who have recently certified their orchards organic. I think maybe if we want to start with Tom McCamant, he's a peach and cherry grower in Paradise, Montana, owns Forbidden Fruits Orchard, and he recently certified a portion of his orchard. And so, Tom, if you would like to explain to us a little bit about that process and what your experience was like, challenges, and how you've seen consumers respond to your fruit. Tom. Is Tom still with us? Yes, he is.
Better unmute, huh?
There we go.
Well, it's been mixed as far as how it's worked out so far. We did it mainly for the marketing. We had some big years where it was kind of hard to get rid of all of our, or sell all of our fruit. And during the transition period, things worked out pretty good and everything looked fine until the end of last year. And changing systems always has some issues, and there started to be a nitrogen and possibly potassium deficiency develop in the trees. And so this year, with our first organic year, we had small fruit, which ended up costing us, I guess, probably $10,000 in lost revenue just because they didn't size. I think they still tasted good. And so basically there were some challenges that snuck up on us and problems we had to solve that we're working on. And the biggest one is getting the right nutrition to the trees. So we adjusted what we were doing this year, and the trees looked a lot better this year at the end of the year than they did last year. So hopefully we're on our way to getting that squared away. And then the other thing that we need to learn to do is figure out ways to optimize our revenue and selling the organic fruit, which we didn't work very hard at doing this year, because it is more expensive to produce than the conventional stuff was. But we're going to stick with it and see what happens for the next couple years.
Okay, great. So did you, sounds like there were some challenges to start off with, but how did your customers respond to the certification? Do you feel like there was a specific interest in the organic option, or?
There is a lot of people that really like the organic option. And this year we had our first organic cherries, and they were at the farmers market. They were very well received at a price that we've never charged before. And so I do think there's a large percentage of our customers that would prefer to have us have certified organic fruit. And how much more they're willing to pay for it, I'm not sure. We're going to have to find that out in the future.
Okay, great. So next, we'll keep all of our growers open for conversation during this panel discussion. But next, if Fred Stewart, if you could just introduce yourself and your orchard, Green Bench Orchard in Missoula, which is a U-pick raspberry and apple operation, and talk about your decision to certify, that process, and what you've seen from customers and how it's influenced your business.
Okay, so I'm assuming you can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you that it was not particularly difficult for me to get organic certification. The inspectors have been helpful. They're primarily interested in my success, and they help me along. And I advertise the fact that I'm a certified organic grower in my advertising and to every one of the customers that comes to my orchard. So those are the things I'm going to tell you. I have a 4-acre orchard, 185 apple trees, and about the same number of raspberries. I do U-pick only. I planted my trees over a 3-year period starting about 9 years ago. I planted on land that I purchased, and it's next door to where I live. The land had been idle for over 40 years, and it was really a thick crop of quackgrass. I used Roundup to get the land started, and then I didn't have any chemical use since 2012. I always was interested in being organic, but I thought that I could not be certified organic because I irrigate my land from the Missoula Irrigation District. I was attending an NRCS workshop about organic certification, and one of the presenters at the time made the comment that just because I was irrigating off of the Missoula irrigation ditch, that wouldn't necessarily preclude me from being able to become certified organic. So when I found that out, and that was about 3 or so years ago, then I went ahead and started going through the process of applying. And it was relatively easy for me because of the fact that I don't have any animals. I only have these 2 crops. I'm U-pick only. I don't do any processing. I don't do any storage. So a number of pages in the application just didn't apply to me. My first inspection took about 2.5 hours. The inspector was very thorough. Sean Mulla is the name of the inspector. Again, he was really quite thorough, taking pictures of everything, taking a picture of the label of the sulfur bag that I was going to use. And we went through the discussion about how I was providing nutrient for my plants. And I mentioned that I was using llama manure from a neighbor down the street. He informed me that I really needed to be, in order to be able to use that, I was going to have to compost it, get the temperature up to 145 degrees, turn it 5 times. Well, I was able to do all of that stuff in a timely manner prior to putting it on the raspberry canes well ahead of any harvest times. So that was just an example of the help that I've gotten from him. And he came again this year, spent another almost 2 hours, a lot of good discussion. I'm not a farmer by background. I was an economist. And so everything I know about apples and raspberries is because other people have shared it with me or because I've been reading about it. So anytime I have an opportunity to learn something, I go for it. And I've looked at the inspections as an opportunity to learn things rather than somebody coming out to do gotcha on me. So it's been very positive. I use the USDA certified organic symbol on all of my posters and my Facebook. I mention it to every single person that comes into the orchard because since it's U-pick, everybody's got to come past me to be able to go in and pick. Many people say that it is really quite important to them. I'm in Missoula, a bunch of hippies in Missoula, so I guess I shouldn't be surprised. But many of the families have kids, and the kids will often come out of the place eating on an apple, or they're eating some raspberries while they're picking. I don't care about that. It's a family experience kind of thing as part of my marketing, but the organic really is quite important to many of the people. It's the first thing I tell people when they come into the orchard is that we're certified organic and we've got bugs. We got good bugs, we got bad bugs. So we just have it there right up front. And that's primarily everything that I had on my list that I wanted to mention. So I'm done.
All right. Well, great. Thank you, Fred. We will move on now to Kate and Kurt from Homemaker's Orchard in Stevensville. Kate, what would you like to offer to this conversation? Kate?
Kate, I think you're muted.
Sorry about that. My little mute button disappears on the screen. I don't. Anyway, Kurt's not here, so our orchard is grown on about 5 acres. We're off the East Side Highway, just north of Victor, sort of up on the bench, and we have about
Just this one.
14 varieties of apples and 7 varieties of pears.
Excuse me 1 second, Kate. Sorry, excuse me. If you're using a phone to call in, could you please just put yourself on mute so that we don't have sound interference? Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Kate.
And so, yeah, we have about 2,000 trees. And so principally, Kurt and his wife, Pam, started the orchard about 30 years ago and were initially certified organic and then dropped their certification 10 or 15 years ago. I've been working on the orchard since 2008 and have always had organic practices. But this year I just pressured Kurt into certifying because it helps, specifically due to the Western Montana Growers Co-op, to move our product beyond the Missoula Valley and the immediate farmers market sphere of operation. Because we have maybe, I don't know if Missoula is limited, but in terms of marketing, we were certified for years with the sort of peer certifying organization Homegrown, the Montana Sustainable Growers Union, which was somewhat effective for several years in marketing in the Missoula area. But the organic certification has made it possible because of the Growers Co-op to market our product beyond Missoula and therefore get rid of our fruit so much easier. So big improvement in our quality of life. So anyway, the certification process, I would agree with Fred, the certification process for us, we just certified this year for the first time in the times of COVID. So that wasn't ordinary by any stretch of the imagination, but we did have a visit with Sean Mulla also, and found him to be very helpful. And the process was relatively painless, except for trying to figure out how to use our scanner. So I don't know, Katrina, is there something else that you want me to touch upon? What our organic management practices involve hormone disruption through twist ties, dormant oil spray, and Virusoft, or the granulovirus currently.
Yeah, no, great. That was a wonderful perspective, Kate. And I think now what we'll do is we'll just open it up for questions. We do have one right off the bat from Rich Torquemada. He's a grape grower who agrees ethically and philosophically with organic methods and has been using them for the past 6 years. But he's wondering at what point you felt that it was economically feasible to justify the certification costs. his small vineyard, the cost range from 25 to 50% and of his gross revenue. And it doesn't seem like his buyers, which are wineries, really care. And so how did you kind of make that decision to invest in the certification for your operation, I guess is the question. And this is for any of our growers.
I'll jump on that initially. My certification cost would be probably less than 5% of my cost. So it's relatively cheap for me to be ethically and philosophically going along with this. It's cheap, relatively cheap for me.
Okay, great. Anything to add, Tom or Kate?
Isn't there a minimum revenue that you collect that you don't have to be certified but can still sell as certified? Like $4,500 or $5,000 or something?
It's $5,000.
There you go.
So if your revenues are below that, then that's the way to go.
That link I put in to the chat is the link to all of those exemptions for certification. So if you're small enough, and there's several different ones, you don't need to be certified and you can say it's organic.
Great, thank you, Zach. Also, a question from Zach is if each of the growers could talk about what their biggest challenges are for organic fruit production, and I'm assuming specifically like in the orchard with your management. I think Tom kind of alluded to some of that, but if anybody has something to offer.
I'll give you my perspective. My biggest challenges are cultivation around the trees. I'm doing it by hand or without chemicals, and keeping the ground clear under the trees has been a challenge. I grow alfalfa and just grass and dandelions in the field, and I mow that and I blow that under the trees, and that's one of the sources of nutrient. So cultivation is an issue. And also codling moths are a big issue, but I seem to be getting a pretty good handle on that with the approach that is used out of the University of Washington that both Katrina and Sandy Perrin have tried to educate me on in terms of how to use the horticultural oil spray, and then I use Sid X. So that one pest I think is pretty much under control. Yellow jackets, I don't know what to do about them very much, except keep things clean. And then the cultivation under the trees. Those are my main issues.
Great, thanks, Fred. That kind of segues into another question we had about using spinosad for coddling moth, and if that's allowed under organic production, and it is, but it looks like possibly Kate, if you have anything to add about your coddling moth control and what you do, because I know that's been an area of focus for your orchard as well.
Yeah, the coddling moth, similarly to what Fred said, also Katrina helped us a lot in understanding the life cycle of the coddling moth and our spray cycles. We have in the past used spinosad. This year we didn't. We may go back to it. However, the difference would be between brands, which is Success versus Entrust, I think. And Entrust is this organic brand, or the organic variety that is allowed. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know. We've had a lot of success just with the coddling moth life cycle management, and virtually had no coddling moth this year. And also I would echo what Fred said about, I think cultivation is probably our biggest challenge, just because between spray cycles, dealing with mechanical weed control underneath the trees. We have a relatively feral orchard, and so having multiple passes with the weed badger throughout the season can be kind of challenging.
Great, thanks, Kate. Tom, would you like to offer any other perspectives on your greatest challenges?
Yeah, well, one of the things we did, peaches don't compete well with weeds at all. And so we put wood chips underneath our tree rows. And I think that is part of our problem with the nutrition, the way we were fertilizing. We couldn't get the fertilizer didn't make it through the wood chips very well. And so we made up for it with lots of foliar feeds. And then I think we're going to try fertigation next year to do it. But the wood chips work fairly well in places, but it's important to have it really clean before you put them on. And then I think next year, we've been doing pulling the weeds that come up through the wood chips by hand. And next year, I think we're going to try success and see how that works. If we can do that on a regular basis, because I think it's cheaper than having my helpers go through and do it by hand. But it seems to work, and the other thing I found out is if you put a layer of bark down before the wood chips, it seems the trees seem to be in a little better shape, because I think that bark adds nutrients and changes things in a better way. But that weed control's a tough thing to handle.
Right. Do you know what your primary weeds are and which ones are your biggest challenges to control?
Well, quackgrass, thistle, and bindweed are the main ones. And
yeah.
And we have some areas where there's a lot of scouring rush, but and milkweed, but I don't think those, and even thistle, I don't think those really affect the trees very much because they're so deep rooted. And but I think the annual weeds are the ones that are the most competitive with the trees.
Great. Any other questions?
Kate, I'd like to make just a quick comment. That workshop that you let us know about 2 weeks ago about coddling moths and University of Washington researcher, that was really an excellent presentation. And if you could put up a reference for that to other folks, I think that would be really quite helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. We will put a link in the chat box for that one. I think it was recorded. That was Vince Jones, who presented as part of an integrated pest management webinar series that I think is every other Thursday. Zach can correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, it was a really great, thorough conversation about coddling moth management. All right. Are there any other questions for our growers before we have our last speaker, Dave Prather from the Western Montana Growers Co-op? Anybody? All right. Well, Dave, you're up next. Dave works at the Western Montana Growers Co-op and helps producers across the state get their produce into markets and restaurants through their distribution. And he's going to offer his perspective on the organic certification of fruits and marketing them to buyers. Dave.
Thanks, Katrina. And yeah, thanks for everybody for being here. I'd like to say one thank you to Fred. I'm really pleased to see you pick orchards that actually become certified organic and not just say they're organic and, spray the Roundup on the weekends when nobody's around. So I appreciate your dedication to that. So yeah, as Katrina mentioned, we're a farmer-owned marketing and distribution cooperative. So we provide services to a range of growers, a lot of produce, fruit growers, as well as grocery, eggs, cheese, milk, that sort of thing. We distribute wholesale into grocery stores, restaurants, institutions, and directly to individuals throughout Montana and into northern Idaho, eastern Washington. we're certainly organic focused with what we offer. That comes from our growers, our membership. That's their typically their focus. We're not exclusively certified organic. We do have a lot of kind of what we call organic adjacent items, which would be like Montana homegrown, but primarily most of our items are certified organic. With fruit, it's really about half from a dollar value that comes from a large amount from folks like Dixon Melons and Tom's non-organic peaches and an apple orchard that we work with up on the lake. But there's a lot of benefits for us with growers becoming certified organic, especially as we sell them further outside of Missoula and further or into customers where we don't have as much face time with, as Kate pointed out. There's a lot of customers within the state that are exclusively certified organic within their produce departments. For instance, with all the natural grocery stores, there's 4 in Montana, and we sell to about 8 overall. The Real Food Market in Helena, a couple small stores, Mountain Valley and 3rd Street up in Whitefish and Kalispell. Many of those won't have non-organic products in their store, and then several others, not least of which is the Good Food Store in Missoula, Bozeman Co-op, are very much pro-organic. They're not necessarily exclusive, but being certified organic will open up that door much more widely to a grower looking to sell there. For us in particular, our customers expect us to be mostly certified organic. So a producer selling through our distribution channels, there's a big benefit there just because we almost have to, it's more work for us to tell people when an item's not certified organic than when it is. So just kind of from our little niche, that's what our customers are expecting out of us. So that's really helpful on our end. The organic also helps, if you're selling into grocery stores where you're not in front of the customer who's the end user, like if you're at a farmer's market, you're going to be talking to the customers all day long if you're at the U-Pick. But the more grocery stores you're selling to, the further away you are from the people actually eating your fruit. And so you have to rely on more external marketing channels to tell your story. And organic, so being certified organic is an easy way to do that. Kate mentioned the Montana Sustainable Growers Union, and that was useful to some degree within Missoula because a lot of the farms themselves were already known through farmers markets and such. But the further outside that realm we go, the less and less impact that had. And produce managers don't want to necessarily become educators themselves. So becoming certified organic is for them checking a box. It makes it really easy for them to say, hey, this grower's doing the right thing. They're growing organically. We know that because they got certified by a third party. They paid their dues, and we can put it on the shelf and you can trust it. It just makes it so much easier. If you're in front of people and talking to them all the time, you can tell the story. You may be growing as organically as anyone, but if you're not certified organic, it's on you to get that information across to people. And you can't call it organic, sell it as organic, of course. Looking at Rich's question about when it's worth it to become certified for a grower, in my opinion, it really just comes down to what your market is and where you're, how much you're trying to grow your markets. If you're happy with what you're selling currently, and if you're not expecting to get a premium from your current producers, then there may not be a good reason to beyond just general supporting the organic culture, as it were, supporting the Montana Department of Agriculture and being able to put that organic label on your products. But it may not actually help your market. But if you start looking at growing it beyond what you're currently doing and selling to people who will put a premium on organic fruit or who are demanding organic fruit, then it just becomes a calculus on what that increase is going to be versus what your cost increase is going to be from a labor standpoint and materials input and certification costs. So I also personally, we have a small organic farm outside of St. Ignatius. We lease it all out right now, but we maintain our organic certifications. So I have personal experience going through the process It's a very small operation, so it's we also, like Fred, get to skip a lot of the application pages, but it's not as onerous as people sometimes make it out to be. And as Jamie pointed out, there's a lot of great resources out there to help you along with that. So I don't think certification is a real barrier. If people actually want to become certified organic, it's sometimes an excuse, in my opinion, for what people are willing to do. But the certification process itself is pretty painless. The inspectors are really great, the ones I've worked with. And I think it's, I'm happy to talk more about it as far as a marketing standpoint on an individual level with certain products, but I would certainly encourage anybody who's already growing organically to go ahead and get fully certified, just because it makes everyone's life downstream who's selling your product much easier. So that's probably all I have for now.
Great, thank you, Dave. Open it up for questions for Dave.
I have a quick comment. I guess, the organic community is not a monolith. It's quite diverse. And people certify organic for a range of reasons, whether those are economic or health or climate health or philosophical. It's a diverse community.
Great. And Dave, here's a question for you. Could you sell more organic fruit, and specifically what fruits do you think there's a growing demand for from your perspective?
Yeah, I think so. We don't have as much organic fruit as we would like. Certainly berries are a good one. We could potentially use more apples depending on the year that are certified organic. And organic pears are a good one also. I think Tom's gonna have us full up with organic peaches here. He'll get his sizing and weight all figured out, so I'm hoping that continues to work out. And peaches are really hard to grow in Montana anyways. But yeah, pretty open across the board. And as depending on the exact timing, we don't really need organic melons. I guess that's one where we probably have enough, but it's relatively open.
All right. And what's, if you have an idea of just kind of the price difference that you see when you're selling something organically versus not certified?
Yeah, for us, most commonly, we're probably 20 to 30% higher. I think in the industry as a whole, they probably say something more like 15 to 50%, a bigger range. So there's certainly certain items that you get a much larger premium for.
Okay, great, thank you. Anybody else have an, sorry, I'm just reading the comments. Kate says she would buy small organic peaches, and baby peaches are much cuter. So don't be afraid to market those, you guys. All right, anybody else have questions for any of our panelists today? Any follow-ups for Georgana or Jamie? Okay, well, I really appreciate everybody contributing to this conversation. I think it's a great jumping off point for many more. And I think now it's time to go enjoy the sunshine. So if you have follow-up questions.
I have a question.
Oh, there we go. I knew I could talk you into it.
Yeah, I just was wondering, as far as organic, does it matter whether it's fresh or frozen?
I'm seeing people shake their heads, and so I'm going to say no. I don't think so. No.
You would need to, if on your processing end, Georgana could speak to this better than I could, but you would have the processor, or however you're changing the product from fresh to frozen, would have to be certified, and you'd have to have that process inspected.
There you go. Thank you, Dave. Any follow-ups to that?
Yeah, that processing, this is Zach, the processing is just to make sure that you're not mixing your conventional and organic products, and you'll just have to show that you're cleaning or just having organics go through that process.
Great, thank you for the clarification.
In order to freeze them, do you have to wash them? Or can you just clean them?
You don't have to wash them.
Okay. Great. So unless there are any additional questions, thank you everybody for joining us, and we will hopefully be in touch in the future with additional programming. I know the Organic University and the MOA conference is coming up soon and has a lot of great opportunities for connecting with that community. So don't forget to check that out. But if you do have follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to myself, Jamie, Zach, Georgana, or anyone else on the call, and we'll be happy to get you additional information. So, all right, enjoy the sunshine.
Thanks, Katrina.
Thanks, Katrina.
Thank you.